Hey there, this needs Beardfoot, and today we're making this Larp hammer from foam and leather. We start with a wooden cube with 6 centimeters and we drill a hole in it. Here the handle will be placed later. Then we need some light but relatively stiff foam. You cut it into shape and you want to glue it around the wooden cube. So you want to put roughly on top, bottom, sides 2 centimeters and front and back about 4 centimeters. When you got that, cut some of the dangerous edges away. And cut your softer foam. Now you target a 13 to 23 centimeter size. And this is actually the more important one. The other one is not that important. When you're done gluing, you want to cut away the edges so it gets into its hammer form. With the pattern comes a plan with the exact dimensions. Speaking of which, print out the pattern. You can get this one or design your own. Cut away the edges and tape it together. Separate the big pieces and cut them out in detail. Next, get your leather, tape your pattern on it, and for the long straight line, cutting it with the help of a ruler comes in very handy. For the other areas, use an awl or a pen to mark them and cut them out. Next step is moisturizing your leather completely from both sides. You wanna use 2.5mm batch tanned leather. While moist, put the pattern on the flesh side of the leather and mark where the grooves will be cut and the pattern will be bent, and then cut the grooves. With a bone folder you can even deepen these cuts. Now on the top side of the leather you want to mark all the ornaments which you want to cut with your swivel knife. When the leather is mostly dry, you can start stamping. Here I'm using a borderline tool in a Viking style. In addition to that, I use room stamps to get in a more Viking style look. Now you want to cut with a swivel knife all the lines for the ornaments. With the backgrounder here I go in between the knotwork. Getting perfectly along the lines is not that important here, but what is important is the correct moisture of the leather. Next is the beveler tool. I got 3 different sizes and here getting exactly along the lines is key. For the finishing touch and the rustic look I use a stone and I hammer it in the leather to get its imprint there. For battle marks I get in a deep cut with the swivel knife and open it up with my thumbnail. Cut a groove on the flesh side along the lashes. This will make bending easier. Also, some sewing holes are needed. With the back and front of the hammerhead it's basically exactly the same. You only want to cut away some leather on these lashes to thin out the leather. And for the pommel, you want to bevel the edges on the flesh side to make fitting together later on easier. In addition to these pieces, we also need some straps for the handle. And this is how your stuff may look like now. We got a main body, front and back, a pommel, and a variation of straps. Next step is dyeing. For the pieces that meant to be metal, I use a black base coat of an oil-based dye. For the other straps I used a dip dyeing technique in brown. Next you want to moisten your leather slightly and bring it into its roughly hammer-shaped form. Next is the painting job. Only take a little bit of paint every time on your brush and then basically dry brush over the surface so that mainly the paint goes only on the higher areas. Next, put on an antique gel. Note that I'm using usually a coat of resist first, but since the base coat is black already, here it works fine, but you may want to test that first. Wipe away all the excess antique gel so it only stays in the deep areas. With the other pieces it's pretty much the same, but with the main body of the hammer I wanted to get more black in. To seal the leather and secure the antique gel and the paint, I put on a coat of resist. Mostly the resist will pool a little bit, but you want to make sure it does not dry that way, so when it's soaked in a little bit, just tap away the excess resist and put another coat on when it's dry. Next, start gluing. Use contact cement, put it on both sides which you want to glue together, here on the lashes of the hammer, front and back, and after a few minutes just press them together and clamp them. When they're dried, you want to cut away any excess leather on the edge. On the main hammer body you want to rough up the edges that will be glued on front and back. Moisten the main hammer body, bend over the lashes and bring it into its final form. The bone fodder is a great help here. Right before gluing you wanna moisten again only the lashes so you can press them easier on the other piece, and then you wanna put contact cement on both sides. Note that no glue will be put on the area which will be the bottom of the hammer head. After a few minutes of drying time you wanna press both sides together. Be very careful here and take your time, since this is the shape the hammer will stay in. When everything is dry, you wanna use a sawed awl to get in the holes for sewing. Be careful with your hand on the inside. Also on the still open part at the bottom of the hammer, you want to cut in the holes, but since there's no glue, you have to hold it in the correct position. Now for the first hideous sewing part, you want to use 2 needles and make a saddle stitch all the way around. Even at the still open bottom part, you want to sew, but leave there a lot of excess string, so it still can be opened and the foam core can be put in. Which is coming next. So you want to put a little bit glue on the inside, not much needed, and then put your foam core in. You should test first if it fits in, and if not, make some changes to it. Now you can use an awl to tighten the sewing at both ends. And go for the next tedious sewing part, sewing the hammer at the bottom together. Curved needles come in here very handy. If not happened already, you wanna bevel the edges of the front and back and re-dye it. Rough up the leather around the stitching without tearing the stitches apart, and put on contact cement there and also on about 16 cm long and 2 cm wide straps. Be careful to put the contact cement only on the areas that will be later on not visible. For the handle I use a wooden one. You want to make sure that the lines of the wood go parallel to the cut, so it's very stable. And then get some glue in the hole and put the stick in there. Joke not intended. Also you want to put some glue on these lashes and glue them to the handle. Some thread will hold it tightly. For the pommel, the sewing is similar tedious and you want to sew it in the shown way. Also you want to make sure that the thread is not pulled too tightly first. This is what you should have now, the pommel with a lot of loose ends that are not knotted yet. Put on some glue on the foam piece for the inside and put it in there. And tighten the sewing threads now completely. Cut away any excess of the lashes here to make sure it fits perfectly, but be careful not to cut in anything else. With some more glue on the inside, you can bend over these lashes and glue them on. To put it on the handle of the hammer, you do it basically the same way, some glue and then put it on, and also glue on the lashes and secure them with some thread. For the flap at the pommel, you want to thin out the leather at the ends and glue them on. Again, secure it with some thread. Additionally, I added some nails and glued the thread around. For the handle, I got some pipe isolation and thinned it out at both ends. And I hold it open while putting contact cement along the cut open edge. Also some glue on the handle. I actually had to reopen the foam around the handle to put on more glue to make sure it's completely fixed. So be careful there and take more than you might think. To press it on, I actually found that cling film comes in perfectly. Now for the leather wrapping, I start with contact cement at the top area of the handle and also on the straps. Later on I only use regular glue. Reason for that is that the beginning is the most crucial and important part, so it has to be really stable, and later on with the regular glue it's easier to tightly wrap it around the handle. Close to the pommel you wanna just cut away the straps at the correct size and then glue them on and use again cling film to press it on. To hide some unsigned areas at the very top and bottom of the handle, I use small pieces of the remaining straps to glue on. For decoration, use some straps, cut them exactly to the length they are needed with some sewing holes at both ends, sew them loosely around, put some glue at the areas they are meant to be, and then put them there and tighten the sewing. And there you go, your finished Mjolnir Larp hammer. It actually has quite some power behind the hits, so you still want to make sure it does not hit too hard. And also the pommel became relatively hard compared to other weapons.